I don't know why, but recently I always filmed my intros while I was making the thing or after I'd already completed it, which to me feels a little bit anticlimactic. I don't think it makes a difference to you, but anyway, today we're at the precipice of a new project. I have not yet done anything on it except cut all of my pieces, so that's that. Hi, welcome or welcome back. My name is Elisa. If you've not been around here, I make my dream wardrobe from scratch and I enable you to do the same because I make my own sewing patterns that I sell on Etsy. One of those sewing patterns is the Amelia dress, which I have just launched a couple weeks ago. I've already made 3 versions of the dress, but because it is a very extensive pattern pack that offers you 22 plus different pattern piece combinations, I'm gonna make a 4th one today. I haven't actually made a version of the dress with the short sleeves yet. Also, I have not made a dress yet that has a slit. So today, I want to do something super summery, something super spring ready. Despite myself knowing my personal color family, I again fell for a beautiful lilac fabric. I am a little bit of a sucker for lilac, even though it's not my personal best color. I mean, literally my nails are lilac right now. I saw this beautiful organza right here that was super cheap. I think I paid like $4.50 or so per meter for this, and it's just so nice. I just love this so much. It's so cute. The little flowers on it make it extra cute. I just went for it. I just could not say no to this. So this is obviously see-through. I also got some lilac power mesh, which I love to use as lining material. This is also see-through, but those two together are gonna make for a beautifully comfortable, nice layer of fabric. Like I said, short sleeves today, no micro collar, a slit in the skirt, and I decided to do something fun, which I actually already wanted to do for the last version of this dress that I made, which is 2 ruffled skirt tiers instead of just 1. There are 2 skirt tiers included in this pattern, one that is a little bit taller, which is meant for the midi skirt, and one that is about 10 centimeters high, which is meant for the mini skirt. But those 2 combined together are gonna make a cute 2-tier ruffle at the end of my skirt. Also, I'm gonna do the open back keyhole for this dress because it is a summer dress. I figured the more vents we have in this pattern, the better. I'm actually also going home to see family for Easter, and I'm gonna go to the seaside with my parents for a couple of days, which is gonna be nice. So I'm hoping that I can shoot the final reveal of this dress there, which is a nice change of scenery. We do have quite a lot of work ahead of us, but I feel confident since I've already cut all of my pieces. So before we get started, just a little preface. Because we are working with see-through material today, the process of lining the dress will be slightly different than usually. So usually what you would do, you would create your shell separately, and then you would create your lining separately, and then you would join the 2 together, overturning them at your exposed areas. So that will probably be your neckline, and if you have an open back, also there, and there would be no other seams holding the shell and the lining together anywhere except maybe for your armholes if your arms aren't lined, and that would be that. However, because again the fabric is see-through today, I don't want to do that, because if I would do that, for example the dart at the bust, you would see the seam allowance facing the inside of your shell because it's see-through. So we want to avoid that. That wouldn't look very nice. So what I'm going to do is I will fuse certain elements of the dress together. So the lining at the shell will be joined before, say for example, the bodice and the skirt is put together, or the front and the back is put together, and that is so that we have the most seamless appearance on the outside, but that will mean that we would potentially maybe have some seams on the inside that will have to be serged, zigzag stitched, or bias bound. And that's that. Right, so I'm gonna thread my machine now and then we can get started, and I think it's better to show you than to explain anyway. Okay, let's start with the front bodice because that's maybe the best piece to explain the process. We have our lining material, which looks like this, and we have our shell material. The first step is to place your lining and your shell right sides touching and to start to pin together your neck hole in the front. It's the first step you want to take. Because I have a slightly stretchy lining and a non-stretchy shell, it's important to try and pin them together as relaxed as possible so there's no warping, and having a center front notch helps me with that. Okay, now that I have pinned the neck hole together, I'm gonna sew it. So once the neckline is sewn, we are going to snip the seam allowance. What we would normally do at the very end of a project, we're now sort of doing at the beginning. Now that that is done, I can go and overturn the neckline, like so. I want to give that a press now. I have not pressed this, and you can already see a little bit what I was referring to, because we can see the seam allowance here on the outside. So this is something that we want to avoid for the rest of the dress. What I'm gonna do now is to make sure that my 2 layers are perfectly placed on top of each other, which they're already sort of falling in place. The most important thing is that the shell covers the lining in most places. Because of the nature of the material, the 2 layers aren't perfect, although they have been cut together, and that is fine. We just need to make sure that everything is placed flat and things are not warping. When that is achieved, what I want to do is to place a bunch of needles around the perimeter of the piece to keep it where it is. Okay, so now that I have placed a bunch of needles, this is fused together, and now I'm going to grab my pattern and I'm going to place it back onto the piece. And I want to make sure that I try to keep to the seam allowance. So I want to meet the center front here, and I want to sort of like just see a good overview of everything. And now what I'm gonna do is I will fetch a removable fabric pen. This disappears when it's ironed or if it gets wet. And what I will try to do is to mark the outlines of my dart as best as I can. Okay, so one side is marked. I fold it over to the other side and do the same thing again. All right, that is done. Up next, we are going to sew the dart in. We're going to do that the way we would normally do it. So I am folding this over, and actually now I realize I should have marked it on the other side. Yep, should have marked it on the other side. Let's turn it around. Now, we sew the dart in the way we would have usually done it. Okay, we have pinned the darts, and it looks, apart from the fact that we have 2 layers here, it looks exactly the same way as with my previous Amelias. So I'm now going to sew those in, and then we see what we've got. Okay, so we've got a front now, and this is what it looks like. So it has the neck hole overturned and the darts are in. And as far as I can tell, things look pretty okay. There doesn't seem to be any puckering happening on one side that doesn't happen on the other side. And now for the sides here, I just push and pull the side seam like this. And then I'm gonna pin the dart down like so. And then I'm gonna cut away any of the dart seam allowance that I don't need. Like that. So up next we have the back, which consists of 2 pieces because I decided to go for the open keyhole back. So what I'm gonna do first is work on the upper part of this back section. Got my 2 lining pieces here, and what I want to do is I want to overturn them with the shell pieces. So I'll pop the right side down onto the lining, and I will start to pin around the neck hole up here and the open section here that goes around the shoulder blades or over the shoulder blades. I will overturn this, turn it outside out, and give it a good press. So my 2 upper back pieces look like this right now. Now I'm going to fetch my lower back pieces. I'm going to start with one side first. And what we need to do is to sandwich this upper layer between the lining and shell of the lower layer. So I'm going to start by folding the upper layer, right sides touching with the lower layer like this. Then I grab the shell and I place it on top once again. And then I start to pin this section. And now I'm gonna sew these seams. So, not gonna lie, the power mesh in this scenario is a little bit of a nightmare to work with because it just stretches in a very different way than the shell, but I still think we will manage. It's just that we just need to be careful of how things are shaping up. So you can see, or you might be able to see, the difference here. That just happens because when you sew in one direction, that's just where it pulls to. The important thing is that it still covers the shell, which it does. So I'm sort of comfortable just cutting that back. I don't think it will have a huge effect on the final result, but you can see the back pieces are sort of shaping up nicely. I'm now going to understitch the seam allowance here, and then I'm going to press this before we can join front and back together. Okay, exciting times. The back sides look like this right now, and I just spent a couple minutes to baste around my armholes and my sides so things are not getting loose. And now I have my front piece here, and now I need to start work around my shoulders and my side seams, trying to align everything as well as possible so that we have a nice finish on the outside. So this is where we will eventually have seams, as I mentioned before. So we will have a shoulder seam that will have to be serged on the inside, as well as a side seam. And should you, like me, work with this slightly pesky lining material, this power mesh, then I would recommend placing a few more pins than you think you need. This would be much easier with just regular old lining material, but I don't do easy clearly, so we'll just have to see this through. We've got everything pinned. Looks promising, so let's sew it down. I will sew this with a basting stitch first because, you know, I want to try it and see if everything fits, and if it does, I can give it another row of normal stitches. Okay, so I'm actually stoked about this outcome. This is much better than I thought it was going to be while I was doing it. I am super stoked about the back. It looks beautiful. Everything fits like a glove. No alterations needed, which, I mean, I knew because I made the pattern. But anyway, I'm quite happy with what the front looks like as well. There is a little bit of a Madonna-esque tip to the bust dart because of the 2 layers, but I think it kind of like disappears because of the texture of the fabric, so I'm not brokenhearted about it. I think it's fine. So what I'm gonna do next is move on to the skirt, which is also gonna be interesting in terms of how I put it together. All right, so we're now gonna sew in the darts into our skirt panel pieces, and I'm gonna start with the back skirt panel pieces. So I'm just sewing the darts in the shell as I normally would. The back darts are in. Now I'm gonna place the 2 sides of the back right sides touching and sew my center back seam as I normally would do. There is, as always, a notch in the pattern as to where your zipper is supposed to end. I'm now going to sew the section below my notch and shut that. I'm just repeating the same process with my lining. And instead of sewing the darts in the lining, I just fold the darts to one side like this. Because the lining is stretchy, sewing in darts wouldn't have a huge effect. So I'm just taking away the ease that is in here, which helps me also to have a nicer finish on the outside eventually, because we don't have 2 darts that are both sort of visible. We only have 1 pair, and that is in the shell. Just need to sew over them once to fixate those pleats in place. Let's get to the interesting part. I announced in the beginning that I would have a slit in the skirt, and I intend to keep my word. So let's add it. You can choose which side you want the slit to be on, and in the pattern there is a optional slit, which you can see here. So I'm placing this onto my skirt, and I'm trying to place it correctly. What I'm gonna do is I'll just fetch my scissors, I find my slit, and I cut on the side that I want. If I wanted it on the other side, I could just flip the pattern over and do it this way. How high you want the slit to be is obviously also totally up to you. I'm gonna do it like this, just a small slit. Obviously we're gonna have to ruffle down here, so it's gonna be a little bit longer. This is about knee height for me. And what we want to do now is we need to overturn those 2 things with each other to have a beautiful slit finishing. We need to make sure that these things are facing each other the right way. And this is what we're gonna sew next before we do anything else. I'm gonna do a little V-cut here to make it easier. Pin the 2 together. I'm just going to continue to pin this here. Okay, now I'm just gonna basically sew straight down the seam, and because of the V-cut, I'm gonna have a nice finish later. Okay, So the slit is in. Here it is. And now what I want to do is I want to try and overturn the lining skirt with each other and the shell skirt with each other separately so that the side seams are still hidden in between the layers, because I realized that neither of these fabrics fray very much. So if I understitch them, then we have 2 lines of stitching securing the seams, and I can cut back the seam allowance to a minimum so it's not going to be super visible. That's kind of my plan at the moment. So what I'm doing is, while I have this front skirt with the slit already done facing up, right side facing me, I'm going to place my lining skirt right side facing down, and I'm going to pin the side seams together just of the lining skirt, not of the shell. Okay, so things are starting to get interesting, and I don't blame you if you have no idea what's happening. But we have the lining skirt sewn together. So where are we? This is the front, this is the back. Everything is beautifully overturned as we like it. And we have the front shell right here. So as you can see, when I open this up, this is nicely overturned, but the shell is missing its back side. So I'm just going to place that on top of here. Whoops. Like I would normally do, just right sides touching, and then eventually I just turn everything the right side and it will be a beautifully lined skirt. We basically did everything backwards today, but for the sake of the material that we're working with, this is kind of what I had to do. So I don't blame you if this is not the tutorial you were looking for. If you do know what I'm doing here, I salute you, but I do hope there's something you can take away from this. Really, the point of this video is anyway, I want to show you how many different types of dresses you can make with this pattern, and I do think I'm succeeding in that, because this is gonna be the ethereal summer dress of all of our dreams when this is done, I think. So let me pin those side seams together and show you. So I want to show you what we've got here now. This looks super convoluted. This is the slit, right? But just do this. I don't know what sound that was, sorry. And we have the skirt, and I can actually get in if I wanted to. This is the back, this is the front, and here's the slit. Lining magic. So my skirt is prepared. I also took some time to baste the waist seams together. And the important thing here is that when we wear the skirt, the lining isn't pulling or sagging because the slit is overturned. So it needs to be the exact same tension on both fabrics for the slit to just hang relaxed, which it does. I tried it on. And now I'm going to join my top end skirt at the waist seam. So I'm just gonna fold them right sides touching. I'm gonna find my midpoint for both skirt and bodice, and then I'm going to start to pin the waist together. Don't mind me, my hair is undone. I don't wear any makeup yet, but I don't know how this is possible, but the dress looks gorgeous, if I may say so myself. The slit looks good, everything looks good. Honestly, I did not think that this would turn out like this with the lining that I chose, but it's amazing and it's perfectly opaque. There is no transparency that we don't want. And look at the shape of this. Oh my goodness. That's Amelia at her best, honestly. So now what I need to do is to attach the ruffle, and I need to figure out how I'm gonna do this around the slit. Alright, so here we have the hem of our skirt. This is the slit. What I want to do, I feel like a lot of you are going to think like, what is she doing? Why is this so convoluted? I don't know, okay, I don't know. It's what it is, but I'm trying my best. I really am trying my best. So what I'm going to do is I will now baste my entire hem, the circumference of my hem, and I will baste both layers together. I'm going to do this and then try the dress once again to see how the skirt behaves, if it's happy or if it starts puckering. If it's happy, then I can apply my ruffles, sewing both of these layers attached. If it's not happy, I'm only going to attach the ruffle to the outside, to the shell, hoping that the majority of the skirt hanging loose on the inside will help it just stay flat and smooth and flowy. So that's what I'm doing now. So wish me best of luck. Okay, I just realized something. This is polyester. Because I cannot serge it, because it will be visible on the outside, I gave each side seam and the center back seam a second row of stitches to secure it double. And now I'm actually just melting the fraying edges just a little bit, but like not crazy, but that also prevents them from fraying more. So this should hopefully mitigate any risk of the side seams at any point just coming undone because the fabric is fraying. Unorthodox, I don't know if this is a thing. Let me know if you've ever done this or seen someone do this. It is early morning and I'm going to the Stitch Festival today, so I don't actually have a lot of time to sew. So I'm gonna try to get as much of this done as I can before I leave, because I'm kind of scared that I'm running out of time before I go home to see family. So I'm a bit on a timetable, which is sort of always the case before I go away. We know that. We know the drill. So what I've done is I took my 2 skirt tier ruffles and just sewed the sides together. So I have 2 long scarves now. These will be ruffled around the hem of the skirt. Now, before I actually ruffle them up, I'm actually gonna hem them right away. So I'm gonna give both of these a rolling hem. So I'm gonna fold it over once, stitch as close to this edge as possible, cut back the remaining seam allowance, and then the seam that I have, I'm gonna roll over once again and top stitch once again. And that's going to give it a very, very subtle, neat finish. I'm going to do that for both of these. Alright, so I have now basted the hem, and after some initial puckering in the back, I have now managed to even everything out. I'm quite happy with what it looks like. And also the weight of the ruffle is going to pull everything down and make it go flat, I think. So even if there is a little puckering, that should be sorted once the ruffle is attached. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'll fetch my ruffle, which I have already prepared. So the hem for both layers is done, and both layers are sewn together at the upper row edge with 2 rows of basting stitches, which I'm also going to use to ruffle up the tier. So what I'm going to do now is I'll place the ruffle right sides facing with the skirt, and I'll start by pinning the side seams in the center back for starters. So I'm pinning the center front of the ruffle onto the center front of the skirt. Again, all of this is right sides touching. Okay, so technically I can now ruffle down this one side of the center front and my 2 center back sides. The side with the slit I'm gonna leave untouched for now. Alright, so I've now done the whole skirt circumference except for the section with the slit, which is right here. And I just want to first suss out how much width I want to add to this little section that's towards the center front. And then the rest of that I'm going to ruffle along the other side. And basically you would fold it in half and then fold the half in half, I guess. And then you would know how much you want. I give this a little more, this smaller section. When I find that, I'm now going to very carefully just cut my ruffle, because I'm crazy. I am crazy, but I don't care. So I'm cutting this. Boom, 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 boom. Ruffle is cut. Now obviously I have some row edges here, which I also am going to give a rolling stitch or rolling hem. So I will have to remove some of this gathering stitch here in order to be able to do that. And I will give these individual rolling stitches. I'm not going to put them together. I'm going to do 1 and 2. Okay, I think this took me a good 45 minutes to pin and gather, but it is done. The slit is nicely finished in the front and everything is pinned to the perimeter of the hem. I'm now going to sew this down. I'll give it a try first and then I'll serge it, and then that's done. Then the skirt is done. Alright, let's prepare our sleeves. This time I'm going for short puff sleeve. So I'm just grabbing my 2 layers, and what I'll do first is to sew the inseam. So I'll fold each of the sleeves right sides touching like so, and then I'm going to sew this section of the inseam. I'm now going to serge these inseams, and then I'm also going to serge my entire cuff all the way around. Now that that is done, it doesn't look particularly pretty at the moment, I'm gonna give you that, but we're going to fold this over by about 1 centimeter, and we're gonna create a tunnel for your elastic, so on the outside it's gonna be mostly hidden away. So we need to first check what type of elastic we've got on our hands, Ah, yes, perfect. So I have this quite narrow type of elastic. It's not super strong, but it also doesn't have to be. It really just has to gather your cuff up, really. And what you want to do is you just wrap this around your upper arm, and you want to make sure that it sits comfortably. It's not too loose, it's not too tight. I like to be able to put 2 fingers in between the elastic and my arm, and then I'm going to give myself about 2 centimeters of seam allowance as well, because we will have to sew the elastic in a circle. So I'm cutting one piece and then cutting another piece on the exact same length, and that also dictates how large the tunnel has to be. So I'm gonna go for about a little bit less than 1 centimeter. So I'm gonna fold this up and sew it down, but I also make sure that I leave a section open so I can actually feed the elastic into the tunnel. Feeding the elastic into the tunnel is really simple. You just grab a safety pin and you insert it in one side of the elastic. You then grab your sleeve and go in from one side first and start to fiddle it through like this. We all know the drill. I have already pinned in one side of the sleeves, and this is what they look like. I hope you can see. So we have a ruffle around the shoulder, and I'm going to show you how to do this now. You want to place your bodice in front of you so you have good access to the armhole, and then you grab your sleeve. And you want to start by pinning the inseam of the sleeve onto the side seam of the bodice, right here, like this. And you have a notch in your sleeve that is in the pattern. So if you've placed it into your seam allowance as well, you will now just pin it towards one side, just one side of the sleeve towards one side of the bodice, front or back, and you're just going to pin it flat until you reach that notch. Once you've done one side, you're going to reach into the dress, grab your inseam and pull it inside out like this, so you have easy access to the other side. Now you pin the second side of the sleeve flat. I've reached my notch point now, and now I can have a look at my shoulder in the bodice versus the shoulder in the sleeve. There's a lot more sleeve than shoulder, which is what we want. So we're finding the mid notch point of our sleeve, which is right here, and that we're going to align with the shoulder seam in the bodice. Now we can see our ease sections in the sleeve, and this is the section that we need to ruffle down, and we want that to be ruffled around the apex of the shoulder. So I like to do this by hand. I'm just pleating my sleeve around my shoulder curve, and I'm pinning it one by one. So once you've pinned both sides, you want to place them on top of each other and have a look at whether your ruffles are the same distance towards the front and the back on both sides. So I'm just placing the shoulder seam on top, and I can see the front is fine, but the back here I could do a little bit better. So this needs to become a little tighter. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so I'm gonna sew this in now. It is done, the sleeves are in. I'm now going to serge the armholes, and then I'm going to insert the zipper, and then we are done. I just about finished editing this video. The dress I actually finished about 3 weeks ago before I went home to see family. As you just saw in the final reveal, I was able to take some footage at the seaside and I had a really great time. It was actually quite chilly to be completely honest with you. I did not wear that dress all day. I had to then go and change into something a little bit warmer. But the things we do for the internet. That being said, I'm very pleased with how this dress turned out. It is so well fitted, which also makes me think I cannot even gain 1 ounce if I want to continue wearing this dress. However, it just fits like a glove at this moment in time and I really love the outcome. What do you think? This concludes, I'm happy to say, the Amelia marathon. I have now made 3 videos featuring the Amelia dress pattern. All 3 of those dresses look extremely different from one another. You wouldn't believe that they have been made with the same pattern. Which of the 3 is your favorite? I would really love to know. I'm gonna read your opinions in a few minutes in the comments. I'll read you there and see you next time. Bye bye.